Explain, we're talking really about the 486 primarily on this show, and what makes the 486 the 486? How is it different from the 386 chip?
Again, it's several different factors. The 386 had a budget of about 350,000 transistors to work with. The 486 has 1.2 million. That's 4 times as many.
Okay.
What that allows is a large amount of memory to be put on board the processor.
Yeah.
It allows certain functional units to be replicated. Instead of having to compute addresses one step at a time, you can compute the addresses all at once.
Yeah.
One thing the 486 does is a lot of speculative execution. It may not know what has to come next, but it does it anyway, just in case that has to be done.
Yeah.
Speculative execution. What could go wrong with that?
Hello, friends, and welcome back to your weekly Linux talk show. My name is Chris.
My name is Wes.
And my name is Brent.
Hello, gentlemen. Well, coming up on the show today, I think I actually have the key to de-Googling my life without compromise. I sincerely mean it. I'll tell you about my weekend with GrapheneOS, the new device I've got that I loaded it on, and how I'm moving away from the iPhone and Google, slowly but surely. And I think it's actually something anybody could approach if they're properly motivated. Then we'll wrap it out, talk a little bit of Nextcloud, then we'll get to some boosts, some feedback, some picks, and a heck of a lot more. It's a really big show today. Hopefully not 2 hours long, but let's get started by bringing in our virtual lug. Time-appropriate greetings, Mumble Room. Hello!
Hello,
Chris. Hello, Wes. And
howdy.
hello, Brent.
Well, hello.
Hello.
I hope everybody had a good weekend. I know I did. I really, really used the snot out of Tailscale. So go say good morning to our friends over at Tailscale. It's a mesh VPN protected by WireGuard. We love it. It'll change your game. I'll tell you a little bit more about how I'm using Tailscale in a whole new way now. Go over there, say good morning at tailscale.com, and if you get a chance, tell me Unplugged program sent you. This is a special episode 486. We're actually going to do a whole retro thing for the episode, which would have been kind of obvious. Still kind of wish we would have done it. But I ended up getting a real bug up my bonnet, as they say, after that Google story about the dad that had his account information handed over to the police when he took a picture of his son's medical issue using telemedicine. Or actually, the mom took the picture on the iPhone, sent it to the dad. The dad's phone auto-backed it up to Google Photos. Google Photos flagged it as child porn, suspended his account, sent all of his 15 years of account history to the police automatically, discontinued his Google Fi plan, and is not letting him back on the platform. This is weeks ago. Everybody's heard this story. But it's really stuck with me. I still think about it today because that very scenario could hit me. I use telemedicine. I've got 3 young kids. I have, until that story, had my photos auto-backing up. And I don't know, I just since then have been thinking perhaps the calculus about giving my data to Google in return for good services is changing now. And maybe it's not the deal it once was. And that is kind of colliding with the fact that a lot of self-hosted services are getting better and better that provide alternatives.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So when we went on our road trip on the West Coast tour, when I was at listener Jeff's house, we sat down and we installed GrapheneOS on my Pixel 3. Old Pixel 3. And I went in with low expectations. I'm not a huge Android fan to begin with. I switched to the iPhone at iPhone 7, and I've kind of just happily done so. I was all in. I liked it after the iPhone 7. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the subscription thing, and I'm going to get an iPhone every year. And I have an iPhone 14. I just pay a monthly price, and Apple sends me a phone.
It's a lot of iPhones.
It's a lot of iPhones, and I have not been tempted to go back to
And to be clear,
Android.
you keep, you generally keep up with the Android side. You buy some of them to have as secondary devices. You follow the news.
I've dipped in. I've kept my Android device up to date. I've kept my Pixel up to date. I've tried a phone, given it to the kids, that kind of stuff. But it just, the Apple stuff stuck. But now that calculus is changing as well. I think Apple is going to have a harder and harder time, especially for the next couple of years, selling $1,100, $1,300 phones. And as they sell fewer and fewer phones, especially because they're not doing anything crazy now, right? It's like we're kind of past the rapid innovation stage.
Sort of a little maximum hill here where nothing's changing too fast.
And so unless they've got some radical camera upgrades, they're probably not going to sell a lot of phones. And as a result, especially since they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders, they're going to try to monetize in other ways. And I believe Apple's plan to monetize will be to try to sell more ads, more services to their end users, to try to milk developers for more of their revenue. They're going to have more and more cuts, and they're just going to double down on everything that makes the Apple experience poor. They'll have great hardware, but they're going to have all these downsides as they look to monetize their massive user base. The deal with Apple originally with the iPhone was you buy expensive hardware, and then they leave you alone.
Right. That's what they're selling you. You're buying the hardware.
That's not the deal anymore. They're changing it. Even if you bought the expensive hardware, they're changing it. And we document this on Coda Radio, and I follow it pretty closely, and I can see the direction Apple's going in. They're basically becoming their own little local Google. In fact, the new App Store in the latest version of iOS literally tracks every single thing you do in the app and streams the data back to Apple. So it's like, sure, it's fine that they're not collecting information unless it's Apple. Then they're collecting all the information, but I'm just supposed to be okay with that.
And that works about as long as you can keep trusting Apple.
But I like that nice hardware. And I like that at least it's not tied to Google. And that I can dip into the Google services I want and avoid the other services. But it has that Apple dependency. And that's where GrapheneOS seemed really, really appealing to me. They pitch themselves as the private secure OS. It's built on top of ASOP, or AOSP, right? I always say it wrong. I like the way ASOP sounds, but it's not how you say it.
I think you got to lean in at this point. You
All
just
right.
pronounce things however you like.
Somebody tell me I'm doing it wrong. GrapheneOS has taken this approach of changing a lot of really small things and some major things, I'll get to that really add up to what to me seems like a ton of common sense improvements to Android to make it more secure, make it more private, make it more anonymous. And as a result, I believe it improves the security of the OS and the apps running on top of it. And they support pixels. They just focus on pixels. That's good and bad. It means, you got to buy a Pixel phone.
Right. Not super accessible to, your family member with a random Android phone they picked up.
The good side is they're really focused on good hardware support. And so within a month of the Pixel 7 being out, GrapheneOS had an official image for it. You're not waiting around years. And they support all the way back to the 4A, up to the Pixel 7 and 7 Pro.
Nice.
And you can put it on like the Pixel 3 like you and I have. It will work, but with just a limited set of updates, they disclose all that information. But like if you've got a Pixel 3 and it's not getting updates anymore and you just want to put a modern Android on there, you can load GrapheneOS. And there's so many features that I think really make this stand out than, say, Calyx or Lineage or some of the other Android alternatives that are out there. I'm not an expert on any of these, but I'll tell you the features that I like, that I appreciate in GrapheneOS, and I'll link you to the features overview page. I encourage everyone to read that because it just gets me so damn excited about what this project's working on. But here's the ones that are a real game changer for me. When you install GrapheneOS, it's a very vanilla Android experience. And you turn on just the Google stuff you want. There's no Google search. There's no Play services. There's no Play Store. There's no maps. It's a real bare Android experience. But they have this GrapheneOS compatibility layer. And they bundle a little app that lets you manage all of this, that installs the official Google Play app and Play API. No hacking, no tweaking. And it is fully sandboxed. It gets absolutely no special access or privileges on your system.
So you treat it like a normal Android application.
And you have this profiles concept on GrapheneOS. So like if you have a work profile and a home profile and you put the Play services and stuff in your work profile, it's not available to the other profile.
Ah.
And traditionally on Android, all that stuff runs with system level privileges. On Graphene, it runs with user level privileges, which does mean like if you want it to run in the background all the time, you actually have to go in and tell the OS to allow that. It doesn't just get to do that by default. That's how I prefer it, but I could understand people who want push notifications all the time and stuff. You might want to set it to run all the time. But since you get the actual Google Play app and the actual Google Play API, there's a pretty broad range of compatibility. It's not 100%, but Google Maps works. The Pixel Buds app to pair Pixel Buds works.
Okay.
So that means you can use Pixel Buds. The reason why I ended up getting Play services was because I needed that to activate my eSIM fully. But it can do something as low level as that without requiring system level permissions.
That seems like a pretty gosh darn good sign.
It's nice.
Have you had anything that's not worked with the compatibility layer?
Oh, good question. I know banking apps can be an issue for some.
Okay.
And there is a community-led like wiki of the apps that work. My bank apps work, but I
One
do
of
know-
those. Try it and see. Maybe it will.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't.
I mean, there's a few things. Oh, yeah, the big one. Android Auto doesn't work.
Oh.
That stinks. I gotta be honest. That's hard because that's really how I work with everything. I prefer CarPlay, even, but I'll take Android Auto. But I'm working on that. You know what? I'm figuring that out. I'll tell you about that in a moment. But I am figuring that out. The other nice thing about having the sandbox method, instead of like a hack to get these on here, you really have you can just remove them if you don't want them after a bit. But it does also mean that in-app purchases work. And if you want, unintended upgrades work. And the Play Store, it operates more like F-Droid. So it's kind of like on the same level of F-Droid. It doesn't get to just run rampant. Like when you're in there and you install an app, you get that more traditional, like, do you actually want to install this app prompt?
Oh, wow.
Because it's just, again, a regular app, and
Yep.
it doesn't have the system level permissions to bypass that request. And so you're managing these Google apps at the level that everybody else has to play at, which feels a lot better to me and a lot safer. And so I've dipped into a couple of things, and I think I'm going to experiment with replacing Google Maps with Here Maps.
Okay, yeah.
See how that goes. I don't know. I'm not loving that. But when I look at the team over there, I see a set of really sharp developers, and this is another thing I evaluated. You know that lock screen bypass issue that came out for Android in November?
Yeah.
GrapheneOS team found that back in January and fixed GrapheneOS. And unfortunately, and this kind of gives you an idea of the dedication of these developers, because the developer was implementing the fix and testing it for GrapheneOS, he did not complete the request by Google in time to get the bug bounty. And he focused on getting the patches out for GrapheneOS and missed out on like $70,000. But that's how dedicated these guys are, and gals, to this project. And, you know, it's neat that they're finding this stuff and reporting it to Google as well and getting ahead of it before Google is in some cases. And then you combine that, and again, you'll need to read the features overview. You combine that with all the tweaks they've made to the underlying OS that sometimes make things a little more inconvenient, like in the example of the Pixel Buds.
Okay.
And I don't think you'd have a problem with this, Wes. I mean, honestly, my goal here is to convince you to try it. You can't just like open the app and open the case on the Pixel Buds and all of a sudden they just see each other and it's just like magic. I actually had to go into like the Bluetooth settings and discover it and then pair it that way and then switch back over to the app. It's like sometimes there's just a few things that are just a little more secure by default that require like you have to, oh no, I have to enable that permission.
Yeah, you got to take an active role in
Yeah.
allowing that to happen.
It's just a little bit more of that, but I don't feel like somebody like yourself or, you know, our listeners would have a problem with that. Or, you know, Brent or anybody in the mumble room, I think that'd be fine. We prefer it that way.
As long as, I mean, yeah, you get to a place, then the earbuds work fine. Then.
So for me, I wanted it to not be a compromised experience. So all right, that's my new phone I got there. I put it back in the box just so you could see the whole experience. I've had it out of the box and I've been using it, but I reboxed my Pixel 7 Pro that I picked up on a Black Friday deal. And I've put GrapheneOS on there. I'll talk about that process here in a moment, but I just, wanted you to see the premiumness of the product. It's nice.
This is a big,
It's big.
sharp looking screen.
See how it feels in the hand. There. It's got the under screen thumbprint reader, and I think it has some sort of face recognition, although I don't know if I have that working or not.
Oh, the screen is lovely.
Oh, it's very nice. Yeah. 120 hertz too. It's heavy, but not too heavy.
No, it has it's very smooth.
Yeah. Performance has been fantastic.
Look at this camera bar on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, it's a serious camera bar. That thing is no joke right there. And it's really high metal quality too. It's a glass back, so I am going to get a case, but I wanted to try it without a case for a bit.
Lovely bezels as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it curves. The edges of the screen curve a little bit, and that's actually kind of a pleasant UI trick.
This feels like a premium product.
It's nice. And it's running GrapheneOS. So you just have a very smooth setup process with GrapheneOS, and I have to give the project prompts for this. They have a web-based installer. You need to be using a Chromium-based browser of any variety, but it needs to be a Chromium. And you need to go into the system and turn on developer options and turn on USB debugging and things like that. And I believe you need to have ADB installed. I already had it installed. So you can do it from Chrome and your Linux box. I did it from my Nix laptop and did the web-based installer. It goes through each one of the processes. Once you get it back into the bootloader area, it reflashes it. It relocks it all up for you. It locks it down again so it's not left exposed to get like some sort of like bootloader hack or something
That
like
is
that.
fancy.
And you're running GrapheneOS. And I've already done one automatic system update, and it just gets it through the standard upgrade process.
So you're feeling pretty secure about like just having it operationally as a phone, something you can depend on.
I think the breakthrough thing for me and why something hasn't really clicked for me is that build it up approach. Super clean, really secure by default Android, and I can just add a couple of things. I'm not at the OS level, I'm not signed into a Google account. I went 2 days before I even had the Google search app installed, and I thought, well, I'll see if the voice search works. I'm curious to know if it works with GrapheneOS. I went several days before I even had that.
That is a very different Android experience.
Very different. Because, I had to use it stock for a few minutes to get make sure all the firmware was up to date. And I thought maybe it'd be better to activate the eSIM with the stock OS,
Yeah.
but I had to just reactivate it anyways. But anyways, there's like 50 apps pre-installed on that thing.
Ooh.
And they all have essentially the same icon. It's horrible. It's just like, so I can't even tell any of them apart.
It's a blue circle, isn't it?
Yeah, a white and blue circle. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very obnoxious. And the GrapheneOS project feels much more focused. And they're really heads down on supporting the pixels, which means you get just top-notch support. And you can go on something like Swappa, and you can find a Pixel 4a for like $160. And then you can put GrapheneOS on there.
Boom.
And now I have something I kind of would feel safe putting a mobile Bitcoin wallet on. And I'm thinking, could I use this for my family? Like, could we all use Fluffy Chat for our family chat?
Yeah.
And could we use GrapheneOS devices? And to me, there is one clear hole that I think our audience has to just come up with a solution for. And that is obviously all the syncing you get, your contacts, your calendar, your photos, all the back-end services that are just table stakes for smartphones. You need a replacement for that. And if you're doing this to be private and secure, it needs to be something that's self-hosted. So I'll tell you about my solution for that. Linode.com/unplugged. That's where you go to get $100 in 60-day credit on a new account. And it's a great way to support the show while you're checking out fast, reliable cloud hosting. Linode has the best support in the business, too, and the best performance. And on top of all of that, it's like the perfect trifecta. They're 30 to 50% less than the hyperscalers out there that just have like these Borg-like platforms that, that want to assimilate you. And then their performance doesn't even match Linode. And today, Linode has 11 data centers you can choose from, and they're going to add another dozen next year. So they're going to more than double their current infrastructure. I've shopped around. I've seen some of these like suspiciously cheap VPSs out there, and I've watched them over the years too. I figure like I could run a system there sometimes for a little while. And of course, in my definition, I'm talking about infrastructure I want to last for years. And the math has never worked out. When you look at Linode's pricing, when you look at their reliability, when you look at their track record of nearly 19 years of a fantastic product, and you look at the performance you get, and performance matters to me, I can't make those other guys work. It's just Linode. I just set up a SyncThing box again. I've done this before in the past, and because I have a new home server, I wanted to move a whole bunch of data. And for whatever reason, thanks Comcast, for whatever reason, SyncThing has to be, relayed when it's transferring files to my system at home on Starlink. So the way I get around that is I set up a SyncThing on Linode. I have everything sync from the studio to that Linode. And then from that Linode, I sync to my machine at home, and that goes direct. And so it's super fast. It's as fast as my connection can take it. And I still have the studio system on the Comcast connection. I still have it participating. It's still in there sharing the files. It's just a small little trickle compared to the fire hose I get from Linode. And it's just so useful to just spend, I'm not even kidding you guys, 5 minutes, maybe, because it's just it's a Docker pull away to get SyncThing, and I already had the Linode set up. It was just amazing. It just was like, oh, this is so obviously the way to go. And once you start using Linode, you just discover more and more uses for it that just make so much sense, and you wonder, how did you do it any other way before, or why? So go try it out, because that $100 gives you a chance to really see what I'm talking about. Like, that's actual good chunk of change. You can really try out the different services for $100. See what you think and support the show. Go see why they keep sponsoring, because so many in our audience have tried it and loved it. Maybe they're onto something. Linode.com/unplugged.
All right, you've got me interested. I would like a little less Google in my life. Maybe not, maybe not no Google. What do I do if I'm still syncing to Google Photos? I definitely am still using Google Contacts for a bunch of stuff that I should clean up anyway. I do need some syncing in my life. What did you do?
Yeah, I definitely need to do some cleanup as well. I feel like this is a key thing, not just for me. I could probably make local contacts and calendar work.
But I don't want to live in fear that I
Right.
I lose my phone and there we go. That seems crazy.
And if you're going to do contacts cleanup, wouldn't you rather do it with a keyboard and mouse than, tapping it on your phone for 2 hours?
I mean, really, that's what got me hooked on Google Contacts in the first place,
Yeah.
right? It was early days, so I was like, oh, I can just sync this right to my phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I was going to try to make a family member use this instead of their iPhone, I got to make sure their stuff's covered too. And so I think for people like us that have that kind of those requirements, I think you have to heavily consider rolling your own Nextcloud as a dependency to going to GrapheneOS. I don't think it's required. I mean, hell, you could sync to Google for some reason if you wanted to. But with DavX5, the app, and Nextcloud, you can sync all of your CalDAV, all your CardDAV stuff to Nextcloud to your Android device, and it's so nice. It's powerful. I, like you, needed to clean up my contacts, and I felt like this was the time to do it.
Right.
So to be able to sit down on my Nextcloud instance and clean it all up there, and then a couple minutes later, I looked on my phone, and it was all done. And I was like, God, that worked. It worked so, so well. And then with DavX, you can sync your settings there, but then also GrapheneOS just semi-recently added Nextcloud as one of its backup targets. So you can do a full phone backup to Nextcloud.
Oh, okay.
Every night.
Right there, that might just cross the...
Yeah.
That might just really seal the deal on
And
this.
on iOS and before on my Pixel 3, when I was trying GrapheneOS for the first time, I was using that handy photo sync app to back and I still have it installed. It's still a nice app. But honestly, if you just go all in on Nextcloud, and it's a little better on Android, you can just use the auto Nextcloud photo backup. And I've been using that over the weekend. I turned that on, and it's pretty good.
I haven't used it for a while, but you're right. I should probably give it a proper go.
It does that thing where it detects a new directory.
I hate that so much.
Yeah. So you got to deal with that.
Maybe irrationally so.
No, I don't like it either. But the other day, it's like, hey, do you want to back up the Telegram photos directory? And I was like, why not? Maybe I do, actually. Sometimes I get great kid photos or something. So I was like, all right, yeah, back that up. So sometimes it's not so bad. But now I'm just letting Nextcloud do that automatically. And it has controls in there for about wait till you're charging, wait till you're on Wi-Fi. And so just using Nextcloud with DavX5 for that type of syncing, and then using Nextcloud for the GrapheneOS backup and the photo backup, it just made Nextcloud the missing piece for this. And so what I decided to do was install Nextcloud using, you guys know me, the Linux Server IO Docker image, using Docker Compose.
You didn't use the Snap package?
No. Although I might as well, because I'm using a SQLite database. You can shame me about that later, because I know I'm going to regret that. But I wanted it really simple. And what I decided to do is only put that Nextcloud in my Tailscale network.
Ah, hey.
So you can't get to it unless you are on my Tailscale mesh LAN. And of course, I've put Tailscale, which is continuously connected, on the Pixel 7. So it's always on Tailscale, and then it's doing all of its syncing back to the Nextcloud over Tailscale. And that's when I realized I probably could have just put this Nextcloud on Tailscale anywhere. I wanted it on my local network, but whatever. And that's working surprisingly well. I did a proof of concept on iOS, and it works as long as you remember to relaunch the Tailscale app once or twice a day.
Of course.
But on Android, no problem, which has been nice. It's been kind of a nice change of pace.
We really get to embrace that mesh flat network, right?
Yeah.
You have your own thing. You don't have to fuss, especially since this Nextcloud, you're not using it. You can use Nextcloud for a lot of different things, right? You could have it be a more public sort of, get access to files, or a public place to view stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not your use case. Why have it on the public internet at all?
Why at all? Right? And so that was my big breakthrough. It was like, well, now I don't mind putting my data on there, because you can't even talk to it unless you're in my network. It's beautiful. And the Tailscale app works so damn well on Android, and the notifications are so much better on Android. there's a lot of them, but you can manage them and minimize them, and some you could just hide. And like once you start setting that up, it's a lot better. But having this sync to Nextcloud in the background has been like the final peace of mind. I could, drop that phone in a boating accident and, God forbid all my Bitcoin was on. It's all gone now. And I dropped it in the ocean and I can just get a new Pixel and sync my contacts back.
You do a lot of negligent boating. That's
yeah,
for sure.
you know me and the boating. So I'm blown away. I knew with the Pixel 3, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. Like when I first tried it on the older device, I was like, this is better than I expected. My days of Android ROMing were a little rough. Camera didn't work so well. Oh, that's another thing. I got the camera app from the Play Store. The GrapheneOS camera gets the minimum job done, but like 70% of the reason I bought the phone was for the camera.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I noticed they said like a security-focused camera or something like that.
Yeah, and it's getting better. It's an open source project, and they're continuing to update it. But you can also, this is kind of the benefit, actually. Google has modularized so much of their apps, and they've just loaded it all up in the Play Store, that you can pretty much pick and choose what you want from the Android experience from the Play Store. And so I just got the camera app. And now I have both. And if, I want to use the toys, I launch the camera app, and I just want to take a basic picture, I have the other app. It's fine. Another compromise for the better, I think. You can load Google Assistant on there, and you can manually invoke it if you want. But there is no like remote.
Oh, you can't just yell at your phone.
Cannot yell at the phone. Not even with the Pixel Buds. There is that stuff ain't happening. There's no always listening. That ain't happening. And so you got to give up that. However, I actually find that to be a nice compromise, because if you want to do voice search, you can manually invoke it by launching the app or probably setting some sort of macro. But it's not always monitoring, which seems kind of perfect to me.
And there's probably a lot of folks that will take that bargain, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you don't use the voice assistant at all, then
it's even better, right?
Yeah.
So it's very easy to get it going. I do heavily recommend Nextcloud. I think that would be important, but I don't know if it's necessary if you have other ways of syncing. Brent, I know you've been a Lineage user forever. I know you've looked at Graphene a little bit. Do you have any questions or any thoughts on comparing the two?
Yeah, I have been running this exact solution, Chris, for about 4 years now. I think maybe you and I haven't talked about it enough, but I'm super happy to hear you found it. But one of my first questions is, why now? Like, what made you shift now? I know you mentioned that article, but I'm sure you've been thinking about those kind of implications before then. But I'm curious, do you feel like the technology's there now, or that there are some of those solutions in place that make you maybe not miss more things?
It's several things. The Pixel 7 is a decent phone. I haven't really been very compelled by the other Pixel devices. The Pixel 6 almost got me. But then I started hearing reports of data connectivity issues from the audience, and I thought, I'll wait. And then the 7 came out, and I was like, that's a pretty nice phone. I might pick that up when it's used. But then they had a Black Friday sale. So it was like $300 off. Like, that's a pretty good deal. So I was like, okay, all right, I'll consider that. So there's that element, the hardware and the right price at the right time. The other element I think that is a factor is that I kind of see a trajectory of Apple becoming more and more customer hostile. I think the Apple fans won't want to admit it, but I think it's happening. It's a shame because obviously they're really innovating on the hardware level, especially on the Mac side right now. But I think from a services side, they're just going to become more hostile. And so my thinking is get ahead of it and begin building a lifeboat that gets me away from Google and Apple and create a platform that I could move my family to. And that's where I see what I'm doing here. That's why I bothered setting up the Nextcloud first. I got the backend infrastructure and the syncing all figured out first, then executed on the hardware. And that just happened to line up with Black Friday. But also, at the end of this, I want to be able to say next year when, the next round of phones come out, I want to say, yes, I am going to get, a Pixel for Hadia now instead of an iPhone. I want to be able to make that shift. And then the kids, they all want phones and they're asking for phones every year. And it's like, do I bring them in on iOS or is this my opportunity to kind of like put our family on something that respects our privacy and our security a little more and doesn't feed into some kind of machinery? And so all those things are just sort of coming together for me right now. And I have been resistant to running another Nextcloud instance, but a little MVP container that 2 or 3 of us use behind Tailscale actually might just be the ticket. And I really picture Google like this giant evil octopus that has been putting its tentacles around more and more aspects of my life. And they almost got me with the Google Assistant and the Nest stuff. And I thankfully I've pivoted out all that and avoided that tentacle. But, as Apple begins to frustrate me more, where else am I going to go? I got to come up with a solution, and I want to come up with a solution that I can recommend to the family and a solution I can recommend to the audience. And my feeling is the sooner we stop sending signals in to the data collection machine, the better. And so I'm taking this leap. We'll see. It's been my daily driver for the extended weekend so far. I know I'll miss, I have the Apple Watch. I'd really miss that.
That's a big, yeah.
And I also have family, a large part of my family that's all on iMessage.
Right.
And I don't know what I'm going to do about that. That might be why I keep the watch, is maybe that's how I do iMessage. I don't know. It's not a good experience. None of that stuff's ideal, but that's what I'm signing up for to figure out, so that way I can make it easier for them.
Now, JMac in our Matrix hat has a good question, which is, does this DAVX Nextcloud setup work on iPhones? And I think I can clarify there in saying that it's an Android-specific application that allows the Android system to see your Nextcloud shares natively, which is really, really nice. But that question actually brings up another point for me, and I'm curious, Chris and Wes, you as well, on your input. I don't think you need to wait till you get a Pixel and a GrapheneOS phone to start moving your stuff. There's a multi-transition method you can use here. So instead of, sitting down for an extended weekend, Chris, like you did, well, actually, you've been working on this for months, including during our trip, but you don't need to revamp everything all at once. You can,
right,
bring up a Nextcloud server and just move your contacts over and play with that for a little bit and gain some confidence in that system while also having, the backup of your traditional system in place. And once you get a little bit happy with how that's working, move another thing, move your photos there as well. Or try a few, if you have an Android phone already, try a few applications that are alternatives, like maybe through F-Droid or something. And so I feel like you can make that transition a little smoother and not necessarily feel like you need to do it all at once and take a huge risk by doing that. Is that something you would recommend, Chris? Or do you think the whole all-in approach is maybe the better one?
I could see it. I could see merits of both, to be honest with you. On iOS, you can download a sync profile from Nextcloud. You got to dig around in the settings, but you'll see it. There's a little profile link there. And then you can load that into iOS to use it as the backend for syncing. In my case, I decided to make it extra hard using Tailscale, of course. I had to.
Yeah.
iOS was tricky with that. But I think you're right. I think your overall points is dead on, Brent. You could move over just bits and pieces. So for me, it is contacts and photos. I don't have a bulletproof solution for calendar yet. I imagine I'm going to use Nextcloud Calendar, but I don't really know how to do that because I'm not really the one that puts most of the events on my calendar. It's my wife.
Yeah.
And so is there a calendar app she could put on her iPhone where she could manage my calendar on Nextcloud and then things would show up on my phone? Or I'm not quite sure. I think I need to figure out for both Android and iOS, and I would love suggestions. Please boost or send them in. Calendar management apps that are essentially a front end to the Nextcloud calendar stuff. So I've done contacts, photos, and I basically have a blank calendar, so I'm syncing a blank calendar. And I think what's next for me is going to be maps. I'm going to try Here Maps. I know you have that crazy OpenStreetMap program, Brent, that you use. We'll see. I know you can use Google Maps in incognito mode, but that just sounds really annoying because you got to invoke it every single time.
What do you mean?
Google Maps actually has an incognito mode. Did you know?
I more meant, what's the operational cost of that invoking every time?
Well, I mean, I think it means you're not going to have, when you start typing and it's someplace you've been, it's in the drop down, and you can all the saved stuff. And then the thing I really, truly want from a good Maps app.
No tap and go home.
Yeah. And I want to remember locations and save locations. And then I want to have access to that for years.
So you want something that you can stuff some data into and have, but just feel a little better about them having it.
Yeah. Oh, and then the other thing I'm replacing, and I've just roughly begun, is something Hidea and I actually use, is we use location tracking for each other just so we can check in where somebody's at so she can see if I'm still at the studio. And we use Find My right now. Of course, Google offers a service for that, but the whole point is not to do that kind of stuff. So I'm using Phone Track with Nextcloud right now. That might be my ultimate solution. Currently, we are just using Home Assistant. So Home Assistant provides a lot of nice functionality as well, and one of them is location information. So Hadia can just launch the Home Assistant app and check my location in Home Assistant. So I have a temporary solution for that, but I don't know if that's a long-term solution. I think you'd love it. I think you would. I think you'd feel good. First of all, you got a Pixel 3. I've been there. And some of the stuff that just didn't run very good or was a little crashy on my Pixel 3 has been flawless on the 7. No problem. The screen is fantastic.
I could tell that already.
And there is this great feeling of having this stuff and not being tied to Google. And what it does is it flips the relationship to where I feel like it should have always been, where I'm choosing to use Google and I'm choosing how much access they get.
Yeah, that part seems really nice. I don't know. I don't necessarily need absolutely no Google, but on a regular Android phone, even on a Pixel, you really don't get any say.
And there's some really sharp security folks that I follow who really have gotten behind GrapheneOS. And I know CalyxOS is really well respected as well, but the GrapheneOS stuff, all the changes, plus the way they handle the Play sandboxing, I feel like is the real nice 1-2 combo.
Okay, I got a next question for you, Chris. When do you think you'll feel comfortable with deleting some of your Google services, like information, even possibly, would you even consider getting rid of your account?
That's tricky because some JB stuff is tied into it. Some backend, like the YouTube account is tied into my stuff.
Oh yeah, fair enough. But conceptually.
Yeah, that's my goal, is basically to minimize it as much as possible. Gmail would be hard, but not impossible. Could do that. I probably should have jumped on that Proton Mail Black Friday sale. That'd be nice. The one that's really, really hard for me is YouTube. I have NewPipe or whatever that app is. And you got to do a whole account export to import your watch subscriptions and preferences.
That's tricky. Yeah.
I've built up a YouTube habit.
I'm with you there.
Fountain has helped break it a little bit, but man, so that's a tricky one for me. And I like it on the TV too. I like the YouTube I got YouTube people I've been following for years. It's just tricky.
I suppose one benefit at least is just the more things you shift, the less your remaining Google account has any.
Yeah.
It's just a worse and worse representation. It still has some of the historical stuff, sure, but
less and less signal. Yeah, I think the email would be a big one.
And you're no longer, if something bad happened, it could still be, it could still be detrimental, especially from the business connection, but it would not be nearly as bad as just a complete lockout of your digital life.
You got it. All right, let's tidy a few things up around here. In fact, let's start with that geocache. We've got some great news in that regard.
Yeah, Jared and his family went out searching for geocaches again. If you will remember, they tried at the Folsom geocache, where I guess that one vanished, or someone found it, or something like that. But they were traveling for Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, and just happened to plan a detour to the Grants Pass geocache that we dropped, and they found it.
That's so great.
Woo!
I love that it was them too. Jared and his family, they've worked hard for a geocache. And if I recall, Brent, you were concerned that particular geocache might be a little hard to find.
Yeah, that geocache was, let's just call it a giant pile of boulders, or, hundreds of feet worth of boulders, and we hid the geocache under one of them. We made it sort of obvious if you were standing within the boulders, let's just put it that way. But it was, it's not the easiest search, so you'd have to work at it a little bit. And Jared was great, sent some photos and a video of them searching and finding it with the kids, and it was just so great. So Jared mentioned that he took a few of the stickers and a little mini computer that we threw in there, but left some of the swag in the geocache for someone else to find.
Well, that's nice.
Yay! So the geocache is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Really cool, Jared. That's very cool of you to do. We've been talking about this internally, and I think our thought process is a little bit before the spring, we get this rolling again. hoping that our community can help us with a website where we could kind of give instructions, hints, list where they're at roughly, like an index of that, but also a form that people could fill out to request that JB send them a geocache swag capsule that they could then deploy in their area and then add it to the list on the website. So I'm hoping something we can offer next year. We'll see. I love it. This is so great, and it lights everybody up. Like when these came in, I sent them around. I know you guys sent them around. It's pretty cool. So congratulations, Jared. I'm glad you guys found that. You can go find our other little geocache out there in Las Vegas. It's Alex. He's at AWS reInvent this week. You can go say hi. I think he's at the airport right now. Or maybe he's boarding as we record to go to Vegas.
Oh, that's great.
And he just got his 6 out, so hopefully he won't end up catching anything. So go say hi to Alex. He'd love to see you. All right, we have some baller boosts to get to, and I mean baller boosts. So thank you, everybody. We want to get to those at this point in the show as a big thank you. Our first one is Zach Smith, who boosted in with 555,555 sats. Wow.
That is
Nice.
impressive.
And they just said, thanks for the great show week after week. Cheers to a healthy, independent podcast network long into the future. And P.S. Lightens a PETA. Hopefully it improves over time. Yeah, it definitely can be. That's why
That's fair.
when Zach's and others boost in, it's like, wow, not only did you take the time to do this and there's real value attached to this, but sometimes it's not easy. And depending on the trajectory you take, it can be very obnoxious. So thank you, Zach's. That was a record setter right there. I think that's the largest boost we've ever gotten to the show. I'm pretty sure it is. And it definitely put us up on the charts too. So big, huge thank you. True Grits came in with 149,312 sats.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
These sats are for the hard G in GNOME. And by that I mean pronounced genome. Just kidding. I really like GNOME better. As for Dylan's laptop, why not just boring old Ubuntu? On an LTS, possibly. His needs don't seem that high. Or the distro he had before Fedora, Elementary? Keep the extra sats. Let's beat that other podcast. And I just want to hear Janeway again.
There's coffee in that nebula.
So I think True Grips, you just bought the pronunciation. So now it is Genome.
Genome.
It's Genome. Officially, the GNOME desktop environment has been changed to Genome here on the show. If you hate that, well, then you need to beat 149,000 sats. I'm looking forward to Genome. I'll picture Captain Janeway every time we see it and say it. So I love it. Gene Bean, who's a frequent booster, came in with a big old baller boost of 115,000 sats. All right, guys, here's the problem. John A. used inside information because he was in studio last week to mess up the pronunciation. Okay, well, there he got it. It is now pronounced GIF on the show, and at 115,000 sats, I assume Gene Bean did the accounting. We will now officially pronounce it GIF on the show.
Should we pronounce it Geen Bean then?
I think so, yeah. Geen Bean. So thank you, Geen Bean. And then some guy named Chris Last boosted in with a week 30,000 sats last week. I know.
Jeez, rude.
Trying to pronounce gnome, but Gene Bean beat him. So we're going with GIF, and we're going with, and then what is it? God dang it.
We're going with GIF and Genome.
What have we done? What have we done? Let's get out of here. Let's stop talking about this. D3Xbot boosted in. It says, longtime listener, first time booster with 100,000 sats.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Just wanted to pop in and say hi while watching the live stream. Thanks, bot. Appreciate it.
Aw.
Marchie boosted in with 69,000 sats. 69,420. I get it. Marchie says, here's a contribution to beat that other pod. And let's boost up in the ranking. Enjoy the sats. The amount was chosen at random. Totally. 69,420.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Totally. Well, it worked. You crazy, generous bastards. Between November 17th and the 24th, Linux Unplugged was the #1 boosted show on the entire platform. We were in the top 50.
Wow.
Self-hosted there at number 9.
Heck yeah.
2 JB shows in the top 10. And, I am so grateful for you guys because a Linux podcast will never be in the top rankings of iTunes. It'll never be in the top rankings of Spotify or iHeartRadio or any of those podcast platforms. It will never. It just doesn't. Those platforms don't work that way. They don't cater to those listeners. But this is actually a platform I really do care about. And it's incredible to be ranking so highly on one that I personally do care about. And what really stands out to me is this is genuine signal. People voted with value, and they supported the show in the process. It's not downloads based. It's sats based. And that is real, genuine votes. That's signal. Like, it came out a few weeks ago. iHeartRadio has been buying ads embedded in mobile games that download their shows in the background to boost their download numbers on the charts. So they're gaming the charts by embedding MP3 downloads in mobile apps. And that signal just doesn't work, right? Because 1 million people could download a dumb show. But here we are. When people have to vote with real value, and we are in this peer-to-peer Lightning payment system, which all runs on top of Linux, by the way, there we are, number one. It's pretty awesome. And it means a lot to us. So thank you for the support, especially to our ballers. We'll get to more boosts in the show. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to the ballers this week. And of course, to Zax, who came in with just a 555 boosts. I just can't even believe our channels took that. But they did because people have been generously contributing, and we've been reinvesting that into our channel capacity. So thank you, everybody. That's really awesome. And one of the things we're going to do this week, and for the next couple of weeks, I think I'll leave it in there for a couple of weeks, is we're going to do a 10% split to the GrapheneOS project. And then I'm also going to personally match up to 120,000 sats in that contribution. So I hope over a couple of weeks, as you boost in and support the show, we'll give a 10% split to the GrapheneOS project to help them invest in future development as well. So I'm very, very grateful. And we have another possible pronunciation we need to sort out. Apparently, it's been noted that every now and then, Debian gets pronounced as Debian on the show. And I believe it's spelled Debian.
I've heard of that project before.
And Amanzer says, you guys, we got to get this sorted. We got to get this right. I can't listen anymore. We have to have this figured out. Brent in one episode called it both Debian and Debian in about a 30-second time span.
That's my
I've
specialty.
only ever heard one other person call it that. Maybe it's a thing, but we need to sort this out. So, Brent, do you want to put an opening bid on the pronunciation of Debian?
See, I'm not convinced I know which way it should be. I mean, Joe has a very strong opinion on what I should think is the right way to do it.
Oh, I know how it's pronounced. It's also not pronounced genome.
Hey.
I mean, it is.
It is
right now.
It is. And that sticks until there's a higher bid.
I think my French-Canadian brain keeps going to Debian, so I'm going to put a bid out there of 13,000.
13,000 sats. All right, it's Debian until we hear otherwise.
Sold to the handsome Canadian.
Sold for 13,000 sats. Perhaps if somebody were to boost in with a correction, we could get to the history of how it's pronounced and why it's pronounced that way. We'll see. I don't know. I think Debian's kind of fun. I like it. It's fun. People listening, they'll tune the show like, why are these idiots saying it that way? They'll be out of the loop. They won't get it. It'll be our little secret. You know how much I love secrets.
I really like Genome on Debian, too.
Yeah. Yeah, if you get a real solid Debian base and then the Genome desktop environment on there, that's going to be great.
That's my preferred platform to watch my GIFs.
Bitwarden.com/Linux. Go there right now to get started with a free trial for yourself as an individual or a team. That's bitwarden.com/Linux. Bitwarden is simply the easiest way for yourself or a business to store, share, and sync sensitive data. And Bitwarden is fully customizable. In the enterprise, you can adjust policies to adapt it to your business needs. And the thing that we love about it here, it's open source. It's open source and is trusted by millions in the community. It's what Wes and I use for all of our credential management, our recovery codes. You can use it for two-factor as well. It really streamlines all of that process. Speaking of two-factor, actually, I'll have a link in the show notes. They have a really good primer on two-factor authentication on the Bitwarden blog. And they say it's, their headline is the top 10 burning questions on 2FA. But when you read through it, it's really just a fantastic primer on two-factor authentication, why, when, how. if you like are trying to suggest to someone, and I think this is something as we approach the holidays, as the techie in my family, this is something I'm going to do, is I'm going to advocate for a responsible two-factor. You got to do this right because it's really easy to mess it up. And Bitwarden, I think, is that secret sauce that makes it approachable for normies. But it's a system I want to use as a power user, so it makes it also possible for me to support them if I need. They can turn to the community, of course, Bitwarden support. So there's a lot of options there. That makes me feel pretty comfortable about recommending Bitwarden to teammates and to family members. So I'll have a link to this what is two-factor authentication and the top 10 burning questions on 2FA in the show notes, which could be a good primer for folks. And in the meantime, just send people or yourself to bitwarden.com/Linux and try it out. It really just keeps getting better. I've been a user for a few years, and that experience is just getting more and more better. Very impressive. I love to say that. It's nice to see them keep at it. They got a good team over there. So try it out and support the show. bitwarden.com/Linux.
As always, we got some great feedback in our mailbox this week. Thank you, everyone. We are holding on to a few of the special ones for some of the holiday episodes that we're going to record. So, on to the boosts.
And now it is time for Le Boost.
We start today with 11,000 sets from QuinZips. I bought a Pixel 6 for GrapheneOS. I'm using Nextcloud to sync photos, calendar, and contacts, and it works well.
Here.
Show.
Yeah. Quinn, that's fantastic. I'd be curious to know other people's experience, especially if they've tried it over Tailscale, and if that's gone sideways or what I should watch out for. Don't want to go down the path of, like, getting pissed and that's my one concern is like I hit the wall and go back to iOS. I'm like, I'm never doing this again. So any tips?
Right, you get real busy in a little moment of just everything falling down around you, and you decide, I can't rely on this. It's not working.
The Android Auto was a tough one to swallow. The overall goal, I feel like, is more important than one particular thing like Android Auto. But that was a tough pill to swallow. And I've prided myself on never pairing a Bluetooth phone to my car. Everything's always been physically wired.
Wow, yeah, okay.
So I never have it like connect to the wrong phone. But for this time, I decided, all right, I'll use Bluetooth because, I can't use Android Auto and I don't want wires because I got a wireless charger for it, a car mount. It's not so bad. And now I discovered that like the metadata information of what's playing actually shows up on my head unit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I guess that's handsome and handy and beautiful and all that. But I don't know. I'm still a little sad about it. I'd have like my music app or my podcast app up on the device screen, and then I'd have my maps on the big built-in screen in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a monitor while I'm driving, and now I can't do that.
Maybe for everyone's safety. D3X Bot boosts in with 486 sats. How appropriate. You may want to look into n.eko for the headless JB peer tube peering. Uses Firefox or Chrome to display the browser to multiple users for remote viewing parties. And this is just a handy dandy looking app. I know I've not tried it. I remember seeing it floating around. It does look quite nice if you want to watch something in sync with some friends.
Huh. n.eko. We'll have a link in the show notes for that.
Not sure how feasible that might be to run or maintain, but pointing the configs homepage at your live stream page might be a good start. And then, oh my, this was a double boost with another 486 sats. If I remember to do it after Thanksgiving, I'll spin up a Docker container on my home server and see how it works.
All right, well, this is your reminder. Let us know how that works. I'd be very curious.
Oh gosh, okay, triple boost?
Yeah.
Also, happy episode 486. What a number. And no, I'm wrong. It's a quadruple boost with 10,486 sats. Also, +1 for the hard G in GIF.
Oh my goodness. Are you serious?
They were a gift to the internet. But if you want to equally infuriate the hard G and soft G crowds, you can go with Mike Rugnetta's proposed pronunciation. Zyfe.
I'm not. Unless somebody beats 115, I'm not doing
Well,
Zyfe.
here's the rationale. If you can't beat them, leave town and set up camp in the wilderness.
That's actually a pretty good motto. That's kind of my life motto, so All right. Zyfe it is. No, I'm kidding. No. All right. We have more on the PeerTube peering stuff. So D3Xbot, stay tuned for more discussion on that momentarily.
MG boosted in with 22,222 sats, which I think is a row of grandpa ducks.
This old duck still got it.
I always heard, how are we pronouncing it now? GIF? That's my French Canadian in there. I always heard GIF came from graphic interchange format. Graphic has a hard G.
All right, fine. I'm calling it. I don't have anything to say on the GIF. Did I say it right? Did I say it right? Okay, good. All right, very good.
We need a tracker. Ready One Take 4 also boosted in with 22,222 sats.
Thank you kindly.
Moved to Fountain and loving it. Thanks for the great content.
I am going to beta test Fountain, and so I'll be back on Fountain FM for a little bit. So I have it installed right now, and I like it. You know what? It's been a minute since I used Fountain, and again, the thing that's really solid is if you just lean into the clips and let them wash over you and curate your clip feed, you can discover a lot of stuff. I've already started listening to another podcast again now that I'm back in Fountain. It works.
Nice.
It works, I say. All right. So on the topic of PeerTube, and for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, Jupiter.tube is our self-hosted PeerTube instance, and we've been trying to come up with a way to create a poor man's CDN. So that way we could spin up some VPSs on Linode over in a region maybe where we don't have enough listeners that are locally seeding it. And we could provide a peer in that region and smooth the Jupiter Tube experience out. And we've been wondering if there's a way to do that headless so we could just do it all from a VPS or something. Well, the podcasting consultant, Sir Alex Gates, boosted in with 10,000 sats and says PeerTube uses a JavaScript library, the P2P media loader, for sharing. You can plug it into a Node.js server, get the tracker and the HLS files, and you're set. Alex continues with 10,001 sats saying, the podcasting 2.0 work I am doing for PeerTube will add the tracker information to the RSS feed. You pair it with Podping and you get instant notifications. So he's come up with a way to add some RSS podcasting spec standards to the RSS feed that PeerTube generates. So you could consume PeerTube content in a podcast player, in a 2.0 player in theory, and you could get notifications in those apps using Podping when something goes live. He says ActivityPub works too if you follow the account that publishes. So you could also do ActivityPub.
Nice. I like the just use the same library they're using approach too. I was just chatting before the show with Tears Arm over in our Matrix room, who'd been playing with automating it using Selenium and Python to talk to the PeerTube API. But hey, if you go the Node.js route, just skip the browser part entirely. I like it.
Yeah. I wonder, do you think YouTube will get its Mastodon moment where everybody gets pissed off about censorship or whatever it is, whatever topic it is, and decides to move to a decentralized platform? Will that be PeerTube's moment? I really don't understand. And it's okay, but I really thought after PeerTube 4.0 came out, which was a really good release, or maybe, I can't remember, maybe it was 3. I thought maybe we'd see open source and free software events or projects switch to using PeerTube. But they didn't. Nobody did. Nobody did. Instead, they're just still publishing on YouTube, like Ubuntu on Air for the Ubuntu Summit. It's all on YouTube. Linux Kernel Plumbers Conference. It's all on YouTube.
It would at least be nice to see PeerTube getting into the mix.
Yeah.
Sure, still published to the proprietary stuff. I mean, that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it has come a long way, and I think we're continuing to be glad we set it up that first time. It wasn't quite ready for us. We weren't sure how to best take advantage of it, but the second time around, it's been going great.
Yeah, the sort of minimum viable PeerTube setup. And I feel like other projects could use it the way we've been using it. I don't know. It's one of those things where the YouTube habit, even for me, is hard to break. So I get it.
Maybe it'll benefit if sort of a more general interest in ActivityPub picks up and stays around for a while. Perhaps that'll help.
I wonder if that isn't the long-term trend that we see from Mastodon. We may see some folks move back to Twitter, but maybe we see broader adoption of ActivityPub. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Ooh, I'll take it.
Crypto Kyle boosts in with 22,223 sats.
You're doing a good job.
Says Debian. I'm sorry. Thank you. Debian has worked excellent as an HTPC box for me. And if you run testing, you get some pretty recent and quick updates. Plus, it works beautifully with CFS, including as a RAID 1 boot and root, Give it a shot. Way less BS compared to the others. So, Brentley, have you considered grand old Debian? It's been around for a long time. It's sort of the tried and true standard. People keep saying Debian, Debian, Debian. They just say Debian all the time, writing in. And that's definitely a signal that stood out. Are you considering putting Debian on the Dev 1?
I wasn't at all until about last week when we kept getting this feedback saying Debian's the way to go. You got to try it. It's a good blend of, especially if you use testing, it's a good blend of super stable and somewhat recent hardware.
Yeah.
And somewhat recent software. So I feel like I got to try it.
I have to be honest. My question would be, could you do Debian stable and Flatpaks? I know I feel like half the people that write in say do testing, but then why not just use like Ubuntu or something? Like it seems like the whole reason you're going Debian is to go stable. So why not go all in on Debian stable with Flatpaks?
You just sideload Nix on there, you know?
Well, you could actually put Nix on there too.
I knew it would come to this.
You could put the Nix packager on there.
That's what I'm saying. Might hold you over for a few things that you might
Holy,
need on the command
this
line.
might be worth trying. Good old vanilla Debian, tried and true Debian with Nix and Flatpak.
Plus, you always have, whatever Docker containers to fall back to if you need.
Yeah, I hate running desktop software that way. I prefer my Flatpak containers. I don't know. You guys want to try this? I mean, I wanted to get to Windows 11, but I have to be frank with you. I'm more interested in trying out Debian. Just haven't done it in years, just straight old Debian.
I'm down. And this is probably the only way we can actually convince Brent that he should go through with this exercise.
But you got to wipe the Dev 1.
Yeah. I have a few questions about warranties and such around there, which I think I'll do some investigation with.
You're fine.
Well, I got to get this laptop charging. We'll see.
We're your warranty right here. Oh. Yeah. But what's HP going to do about a bad outlet?
I'm hoping it's just the charger. We're going to see. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah,
we'll report soon.
Okay. All right. But I really want to try it, so find out. Because I really think, I've had this experience now with Silverblue and Nix where, like, using Flatpaks, using that kind of stuff really gets you pretty far.
We just tell Brent to use Clonezilla, take it back up that way.
Yeah, you and Clonezilla, Wes. Has it been like 4 episodes in a row that you've snuck Clonezilla in? Like, somebody needs to check that. I don't. And I don't mean this ironically. You could get an older version of Plasma if you go with Debian stable, and you might like it better because I know you were kind of in a golden era there for a while. So you could maybe go back a few notches on the Plasma belt and also get a real stable apt base that you're familiar with.
I hadn't even considered that because I feel like Plasma's been doing a bunch of work lately, and I feel excited by that too. But I think there's something to be said about stability on your main production machine. So I think we just got to try it.
Yep. All right. Trev Dev boosted in with 2,000 tasty sats. Well, I've hit a cynical point where I mostly don't even have much of a desktop. No display manager, no DE, just my TTY and a window manager. Keeping things simple prevents a lot of frustration for me. It's not exactly suckless, but the less you have, the less you break. That is true cynical. That is peak Linux cynical user. I just have a TTY. I fire up my X server when I need it. No window manager, no desktop environment.
Can we do the podcast that way?
You could probably. I have to say, I hope I don't ever go that far though. I want the desktop environment to work. I feel like I've stuck it out with computers long enough now that they've got to nail this. I refuse to give in at this point. You know what? I've put up with crap for too long, damn it. Daja boosted in with 4747 sats.
BOOST!
You're doing a good job.
I know you're technically not supposed to do this, but I've been running Debian SID for 3-ish years as a software engineer. Don't tell Canada. And it's been fantastic. You add time shift backup, and it's been no less stable for me than Ubuntu. I would hope it's been more stable. Right? That's my thinking with Debian, is it's simpler than a full Ubuntu system, so there's less stuff there. And again, with a workstation, that's probably what you want.
Right, and you're not going to get sudden directives or things included from upstream that you didn't really expect or that might go away in a couple of releases.
100%. Well, I am glad we got that settled. Moving right along, gentlemen.
Martin DeBoer boosted in with 10,000 sats.
It's over 9,000!
Hi, Chris, Wes, and Brent. I think it would be fun if Brent would try OpenSUSE Tumbleweed on his Dev 1. Now, we're getting conflicting information here.
Oh, I thought we had it set on Debian.
That would bring him back to the latest KDE. It's AMD, so graphics work out of the box, and he would always have the latest software. I can help to get him set up if needed. Well, that's very generous.
Oh, that is nice.
Forget OpenSUSE Micro OS for the desktop. All documentation online is based on a writable root directory. That future takes a little bit more time to mature. Kind regards, Martin.
You have any inclination to want to try SUSE?
Well, the last time we tested it, I think it was in the spring, I got really intrigued, especially with the really nicely built-in Btrfs rollbacks.
Right.
It's been at the top of my list for throwing that on this machine. So I feel like maybe we need like a few weeks of just like
Oh my goodness.
trying stuff. Maybe we need a tournament style, you know?
I can't with
Debian
this. No, because
versus OpenSUSE.
I feel like you have been suffering since the road trip. You got to
That's
get
true.
this fixed and
Yeah,
sorted.
please. Yes.
And I don't know. This to me kind of feels like a measure twice, cut once kind of a thing. You could spend 3 months trying out different distros.
I suppose at least with Debian, you don't have to change your package manager.
Yeah.
That's true. I think the reality for us is this question might just never be sorted, and I just need to jump into one, give it a try, see how much I suffer, and try the next one.
Or the other solution would be to have like 8 computers, just one for each distro you might potentially want to try.
Oh, I have 8. That's not the problem.
You can install Ventoy on a hard drive.
Dark Year Elite boosted in with 2,222 sets. I'd like to let people know about NAS from QNAP, TrueMaster, and Asystor, where it's possible to install an OS like TrueNAS Scale or Ubuntu. I learned it from the YouTube channel NAS Compares. He has several videos showing how to install power consumption and even video capabilities. I'm interested in QNAP TS464 with 4 bays in it. It has 2 NVMe slots. One could be for the OS and a PCIe slot as well. 4 cores and up to 16 gigs of RAM. As a cheap, always running box, and it's small too, it seems like a really great solution.
I have a QNAP here that I unfortunately got with a bad drive slot. And so I never really got to fully.
Yeah.
And it's such a neat little box. It came preloaded with Ubuntu and an Ubuntu desktop.
Wow.
Yeah, it's got a little HDMI port on there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
pretty weird. And it's a cool little machine, and it had virtualization support, but that dead bay. And then I tried to get it RMA'd, and it just went back and forth forever, and I ended up moving on. And I still have it sitting upstairs on my desk, and it reminds me, staring at me.
It looks nice up there. I always wondered what you used it for. I used a QNAP server that is ancient now. It was surprisingly nice because it sort of has all the features that you would want, and it was pretty stable too. So I'd say give it a shot.
And they're compact, and it's a cool way to have like a little embedded Linux system. A little noisy. I did try it briefly in the RV, and you could hear the whine of the spinning Rust.
Sure.
I also will say the one I used was extremely slow for network throughput. So that's something to consider.
I mean, I'm sure that's improved these days, but there's always those things are just a compromise. Sometimes they're the right set of compromises.
The Golden Dragon boosts in with a row of ducks. Coming in hot with the boost. On the topic of family support, I wish I could convince my older hardware home to move over so I could support them, but they have needs that require Windows. And yes, I've tried using bottles and wine, but so far have been unsuccessful. Also, for those with better opinions than mine, that's assuming a lot, I'm seeking a new distro home. I'm on a 6th gen i7 and an RTX 2060. Debian seems all right, but... And then Golden Dragon continues with 2,223 sats. But I've never had to install NVIDIA by hand. Maybe it's time to learn? Great show. Boost you next week.
Good to hear from you, Dragon. And admittedly, it's been 100 years since I've set up an NVIDIA GPU on Debian. But the process is pretty straightforward. First, you just have to verify that, yes, indeed, your system is seeing the NVIDIA card. And then my understanding is they actually do have a semi-recent driver, although you might want to double check that, in the Debian contrib package repository. And if you add that repository, do your apt update, enable the non-free stuff, then you actually can just do an apt install NVIDIA-driver. I don't know for sure, so I would love feedback on that. But it seems to be that's one of the many options available, and this one seems to be the simplest because I reviewed a few for you, and I'll link to the simplest solution in the show notes so you can just review it there. And let me know what you think. I look forward to hearing how it goes.
MG boosts in with 2,023 sats. Prediction. Chris will mispronounce a user's handle.
I can't believe, has anybody ever made that? That seems like a solid one.
That does seem like a solid one.
Yeah, like I could do it right now. I think this gentleman's name is Manuel, but the username?
You want to give it a shot?
Is it a J sound or a G sound?
Right. Gamanuel89.
Well, Gamanuel89 boosts in with 222 sats. Have you ever checked out Tuxedo computers? But mostly I'm thinking they're Tuxedo OS. I think they're kind of like the System 76 of Europe, with a sort of Pop OS with KDE Tuxedo OS. I guess version 2 is about to be released. Solid Ubuntu, stable base, updated KDE Plasma and frameworks, advanced tools, and a lot more.
It's a good question. So I put this one in the doc because I wanted to open up a conversation on the show about Tuxedo OS in particular. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. I generally am skeptical of vendor-spun Linux distros. It took me a long time to come around to Pop.
Yeah, we were pretty skeptical at first there.
However, every time I've kind of implied that I'm a little skeptical of Tuxedo OS on air, I've gotten notes from users of it that say, actually, it's working pretty good for me. So I'm curious, what have you thought? What have you heard?
Honestly, I didn't know it existed. I mean, I'm familiar with Tuxedo, the company, but, they're European-based, as we've said here, so I've never had an opportunity to actually, maybe I've seen them at someone with them at a conference or something like that, but I've never actually used one for any length of time. I did not know they had their own operating system, so I'll have to check it out.
Well, yeah, it's been around for a bit now, and they, have version 2.0. Wes, Brent, would you be inclined to use something like Tuxedo OS if you got some of their hardware, or would you be inclined to just nuke and pave?
I mean, I think I'd give it a try. What gets me interested is it feels like one of the few distributions out there doing KDE as kind of their main interface. KDE seems like it's sort of the secondary in most places. I know that's not exclusively true, but you can write in and correct me. So this gets me kind of interested. And if they really are akin to the System 76 of Europe, and they've been around for a while, as we know, I think there's something there. So I'd be curious to try it.
Well, they've got a download right here. He doesn't have to get a Tuxedo computer.
I don't know if, it does seem kind of compelling. So it has kernel 5.15, Mesa 22.2.3, Pipewire 3.60.
Okay.
Wire Plumber is in there as well. They're going to ship the final release of Tuxedo OS 2, and I don't know when this page was updated, but I'm on their website. They're going to ship the final version with Linux 6 and the NVIDIA driver, which we were just talking about for Golden Dragon, version 520. And then you're going to get Plasma 526.3. It does seem kind of good, doesn't it?
Do we have a date on that release by chance?
I don't know. Let's see. I'll go over to their preview page. Looks like it was last updated on the 17th, so it's a pretty fresh beta.
I mean, all that seems pretty fresh to me.
So they're working on it. Interesting. I think this is one where our focus should be on Debian right now, but
down the line,
we could be outsourcing like opinion from the audience, just kind of start getting some input on what people think about it, what they've tried, what hasn't worked. And then maybe down the line, it is worth a look. Because one of the things I would like us to do, not that I have any reason to be suspicious, but I wouldn't mind if we poked around, looked at how it was built, see if we see anything odd to us, anything set up a little off, just because I'm curious. I doubt there would be anything, but if we're going to take a look at Tuxedo OS, I feel like that should be part of it.
Like wobbly windows or something? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I'm just thinking like weird kernel modules or strange little bits here or repos that don't make sense. Just little things that could be a red flag. I'm sure there's nothing, but again, as Linux users, I think we also have to check for this stuff too, especially when there's so much choice out there.
We're just curious also, right? Like part of the thing about using someone's distribution they put together is seeing all the choices that they make, all the little knobs and tweaks and setups that you have to do to make a coherent distribution. Awesome Matt boosts in with 6,969 sats.
Coming in hot with the boost.
I like Session and the concepts they use, but it has all the same problems as Library and Odyssey. It runs on a coin-based network on the back end.
Red flag.
Right. On the other hand, Signal is implementing their own coin for payments, and, well, Telegram rolls their own message encryption.
Yeah, that's true. All red flags.
That pretty much just leaves Matrix, which is more difficult to onboard normies to.
Yeah.
How did the state of encrypted messaging become so dismal?
Boy, awesome, Matt. Nailed it there. That is truly the state of things, And Telegram tried to go all in on the crap crypto stuff, too. They got knocked down.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
remember? They tried to go for the whole ICO thing, and now they've had to switch to this membership stuff. I don't like Moxie's justification for the coin. I think it doesn't hold up. I'm disappointed in all of it. That's why I mentioned I'm kind of keeping an eye on Fluffy Chat. Maybe Dendrite, or maybe it's just easier down the road to run a Matrix server too. They are working on that, and maybe the techie in the family or the social group sets one up, and then you put everybody on Fluffy Chat. And
if you're only using it for a family group, I mean, one, you might be, like in your case, you could locally administer and get it set up so they can just chat on it.
And I probably would use Dendrite in that case.
And then two, like, depending on the use case, but maybe you don't need to, if it doesn't federate at all, seems like a much simpler server to administrate.
Right. You wouldn't necessarily need, I'd probably want that, but you wouldn't necessarily need it if you're just doing it for family chat.
Or if you were using it for your small business or, whatever, just internally.
Right. Like a Slack alternative.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's kind of compelling because then later on, if you wanted to federate, you could.
You still could,
yeah. Something there. All right.
PegNut boosts in with 3,333 sats. Not sure which podcast you asked about this, but on where to collect FLAC files. There is dmix.app, which downloads tracks directly from Deezer. As far as I know, with a premium sub to Deezer, you should get FLACs there too.
Okay.
There's also LiDAR on steroids, which bundles that whole process with LiDAR and lets you use LiDAR's interface.
I experimented this as part of this transition.
Right.
I was telling the guys in the pre-show, by the way, just an aside, we've had some banner pre-shows recently for the members. I'm using PlexAmp right now. I know about Jellyfin but I'm using PlexAmp, and I just got a whole bunch of FLACs of Christmas songs, and I'm just making my own playlist, and I'm loving it. It's working so much better than the streaming service for me because I'm at a point now where every single song plays I like. That's huge. Huge.
NorCal Geek boosts in with 8,080 sats.
Ooh.
People who pronounce GIF as GIF probably also have their toilet paper roll feed down the wall instead of the correct way, over the top. It doesn't make you a bad person, but you're definitely sus.
Yeah, I just can't believe it when I sit down and I see it go in the wrong direction. I'm like, do you want to smash your hand against the wall? Am I so odd? Like, it just seems intuitively obvious which direction the teepee should go.
I just assume they were in a rush. The last one was used up and just got replaced without much thought.
But you're just basically screwing future you, right? Like, getting the paper toilet roll on right is a gift to future you, potentially for days. I don't know about you and your roll usages, but it's a gift that could last days. I just can't even with that. I completely agree. I'm old enough that when everybody started talking about these animated things, they pronounced it the wrong way. And you know what? I'll adapt.
You've always preferred Zyfe.
Always preferred it so much. So much. Marcel boosted in with 25,000 sats.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
If you guys want a good Bitcoin podcast on the top of the charts, then you should boost into the Bitcoin Dad Pod. Oh, thank you. I haven't mentioned that in a while. And the Bitcoin Dad just got back from El Salvador. He went down there for a Bitcoin conference. He went to Bitcoin Beach, got a real sense of what it's like on the front lines. And it's just, last episode is just loaded full of his experiences and all kinds of news. He's a lot of fun to do a show with, because he really is clever and he stays on top of this stuff. So go check out the Bitcoin Dad Pod if you haven't. I'm having a lot of fun over there. Beer Dad 0234 boosted with 10,101 sats.
Binary sats.
All of this really is a battle that took place this week. Something our audience stepped forward to help us do, and that is defeat Guy Swan and the Bitcoin Audible podcast in the charts. Beer Dad 0234 came in with 10,001 sats. Cyber Fighter came in with 3,000 sats. And Nomad Coder came in with 1,555 sats.
It's a boost battle!
And the Bosch threw 300 sats into the battle. all topped out with those 25,000 sats from Marcel to fight the charts. As well as our baller boosters, we did. We came out number one. Thank you, everyone. It was a fight of the ages, and we are all honored in your sacrifice. You are true warriors out there. Circus Freak came in with 12,000 sats. I've been a JB listener since 2007. My wife doesn't really know what Linux is, but she sure knows your voices. Keep up the good work. Hopefully many more decades of listening to come. Well, hello, Circus Freak's wife. Thank you for putting up with us. Then Circus Freak tossed another 4,000 sass to say, just forget figuring out the distro thing, guys. Here's a 2023 challenge. Build a JB Linux distro.
Oh, I mean, then we would have an answer to that question, right? That of course we have to use the show's branded distro.
And then he sent 15,000 sats just to say, Wes Payne, 2024.
You're doing a good job.
I have to say, I don't think I'd vote for you, Wes.
That's fair.
You're a good guy, but I think if you gave Wes a lot of power, he'd turn into a dictator. I mean, he's a good guy now because he doesn't have the power.
I don't know.
Right? But you know what I'm talking about, Brent. You give Wes too much power.
I think he's better than the alternatives by
bad.
far. So there's that.
Bad. Okay. All right. Okay. That's fair.
That's just because my motto is build it back. Brenter.
It's true. You got me with that one.
Curious concept boosted with 25,000 sats.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Been really enjoying the live stream. I'd love to see the value streaming enabled for the members. A long-time listener, first-time booster. Go podcasting! Yes. That's hopefully an early goal of 2023, if not the end of this year. We'll see. We don't move quite as fast as we did when we were part of a bigger company and had more people. But it is something that is on the top of our priority list.
In our sights.
Yeah. In fact, redoing the whole RSS feed infrastructure, which we talk about on office hours. If you are curious, it's coming. And it's going to be a lot. Seacander boosted in with 6,000 sats.
BOOST!
10-year listener. About time I share something with you.
Oh, wow.
Isn't it amazing how many first-timers, long-timers we're getting with the boost?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Freaking awesome. I have a suggestion for a new protocol for decentralized social protocol solving a lot of the issues with the current systems. I think you guys should check it out. Look into Nostr. Nostr.
Missed opportunity for nostril.
Yeah, he says good luck pronouncing that one. Yeah, has been a listener for a while. Which means notes and other stuff transmitted by relays. It's quite simple, but really powerful. And it has a dynamic community behind it and a lot of interesting services. More details linked here. We'll have a link in the show notes. Nostr. I've been seeing this pop up everywhere. I've been seeing all kinds of different sites and services use Nostr, the Nostr protocol, which bills itself as the simple protocol that creates censorship-resistant global social network once and for all. It doesn't rely on any trusted central servers, hence it's resilient. It's based on cryptographic keys and signatures, so it's tamper-proof, and it does not rely on any peer-to-peer techniques, and therefore it works.
I like it. It totally makes sense, but it's just kind of amusing. They say, this is a work in progress. Join the Telegram group.
Which is a centralized social platform.
Oh.
That's spicy. Couldn't be Matrix. No. All right. It's our last couple of boosts, and we round it out with a ditty from Mississippi Mayhem with 2,000 sats. Since we're getting all sappy and telling stories, I guess I'll tell mine about JB playing a big part in my life's history. My wife and I adopted our son right out of the NICU. I'd just come off of deployment and was on R&R, so we were able to sit in the waiting room all day, trying to take every chance to just take it in. But he was too sick and coming off of a dependence of his biological mother's drugs. So we only got to see him for a few minutes per day. At the time, I didn't have a podcast app, he continues. So I spent a bunch of time downloading podcast MP3s, and I played them through VLC. That's how I started listening to JB on the regular. So it's got a tie-in for me that goes just beyond liking Linux. I just thought I'd jump in on this and say congratulations to people getting married as well. That's a powerful story.
That's wonderful, yeah.
That's really amazing. It's hard for us when we make these shows. It's hard for us to even fathom what you're doing when you're listening, where you're at in your life. It's really cool to hear these stories because that's just not something I would have pictured. It's just not my experience. And so It's amazing to see that. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Mississippi. It just means a lot to us. I do this now. I do this for bigger reasons than when I started. And so hearing that kind of stuff is really awesome. We also got a hello from Germany, 600 sats from user 593, just giving us a shout. And then Manuel, 222 sats from Italy, trying out Fountain FM.
Well, hello there.
Hello there. I'm right there back with you. Find Chris Lass on there and follow me. I'm going to be clipping more. If you'd like to send a boost into the show, we do love them. You can do that by upgrading to a Podcasting 2.0 compatible app at newpodcastapps.com. And if you really want to knock our socks off, see if you can get Boost CLI working. Good luck. Set aside a couple of weeks. That's all. Thank you, everybody. Newpodcastapps.com. And of course, you can always send us an email at linuxunplugged.com/contact. Couple of picks before we run. I have been collecting tools to replace Evernote with potentially Nextcloud, it's seeming. That's the direction I'm trending. Maybe it's a Joplin Nextcloud combo. Maybe it's an Obsidian Nextcloud combo. I'm not sure yet, but that's the general direction. And I wanted to cover 2 picks this week that are really useful when you're trying to capture data and store it long term. One is an app where I can take something like a low res picture or something that maybe like I had a picture that my kid generated using the Deep Fusion stuff, and it was really small, tiny little output. I'm like, well, I want to save that, but I want to save a bigger version of it, and I want to make it look bigger and higher resolution, right? Well, that's where an app that is simply named Upscaler comes in.
Hey, yo.
And it upscales and enhances your images with that nice high-end Vulkan and all that kind of stuff. So it can really kind of crank it out. Or, it'll do it on the CPU as well. It'll run a little slower, but it gets it done. I got it done on my Intel laptop just fine. So it's just simply called Upscaler. And so I dropped in a tiny like 3 something by 500 something image and put out like a 2040 by 2040, so it'll be much larger.
That is quite the upscaling.
And it worked. It's a little softer or whatever, but it does the job. And so for me, with like pictures of license plates, things on documents that I want higher resolution, it's going to be great for that. And it gives you just one kind of option to tweak besides the size. It's like, is this a drawing or is this a photo? Give it a little bit of information, and it can do a lot.
I love that this is just a flat pack too. Like,
takes 2 seconds to install.
So easy.
And then you've got a high resolution image upscaler.
You mean I don't have to like go get some sort of proprietary software suite that has its own installer that has to do a bunch of updates and then sync, and then I have to put in my license key, and then I can finally upscale my image?
Nope. I mean, nope. You don't even have to put a Docker thing together and fire up a container and run it through there through some web UI. It's just a good old little GTK app and a flat pack.
Can I ask for a little bit of clarification? Is this just doing like good old classic interpolation, or is this like some kind of fancy AI rendering of your original?
Well, it tells you this tech. I'm not familiar with it. It's a real ESR GAN. So I think it is a more intelligent type of upscaling than just your traditional old school upscaling. So, and this real ESR gen is an open source project itself. That's up on GitHub separately. You could set it up and run your crap through that. And it has support for Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA acceleration. And what this developer did is just put it in a really easy to use GTK front end that you just drag and drop the image on, and it's preset to a high res, but you can adjust that.
Well, it sounds pretty lovely to me.
It is lovely. And then one last super handy pick for you all before we leave you this week, and it's called Frog. Frog, made by Tender Owl, also available on GitHub.
What are these names? I'm intrigued already.
It's available in the Elementary OS App Center as well. It has the Elementary OS design ethos. And Frog extracts text from images, videos, PDFs, etc. Its tagline is extract text from anywhere. Quickly extract non-selectable text from PDFs, screencasts, web pages, photos, etc. It does just that. You give it an image, and then what it gives you is a text document. So you feed an image in, and it just scans all of the text it can find, and what you get is just a plain text document with everything in there. And I had surprisingly good results.
Oh, nice.
Now, picture this. You're going by a store that you want to revisit or something you want to check out or the price of something. You take a quick picture with your cell phone. Now, I would use Google Photos in the past to search the text of that photo.
Definitely.
Apple has recently introduced this in like an OS ago. And this is something that I've become reliant on these big commercial platforms
for. Super handy.
And so going away from Apple and Google, I needed my own solution for this. And that's where Frog came in. So it'll let you get the text out of any picture or video, or for some reason a PDF if you can't select it. And again, it takes something that's rather complex on the back end, and it gives you a simple, clean GTK application. You just drag and drop, and you get the output. And it's also available as a flat pack, so really easy to get installed.
I'll be curious to hear more about how you fit that all into your workflow
Thank
as
you.
you build it.
I'm glad you're interested, because I'm going to try to get you to do it one day. You know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's why I put the Pixel in the box, just so that way you'd be like, that is nice. That'd be nice. We could be GrapheneOS buddies, and then we could give Brent a hard time for using Lineage, even though it's fine.
See, now this is the part that's selling me.
I know, right? We love giving Brent a hard time. So I know it's great fun.
I love you for it.
All right. Well, if you want to get together with us in person, we do the show every single Sunday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. We've got a mumble room that you can listen to live or jump in on the conversation. Of course, we've got the Matrix chat. All of that every single Sunday at Jupiter.tube.
See you next week. Same bad time, same bad station.
And links to everything we talked about today, linuxunplugged.com/486. That's where you'll get all that stuff. And if you want a little more Linux show, go get Linux Action News. Wes and I are breaking down everything that happens in the tech industry that impacts Linux in the world of open source. Lean means just what you need to know, get you in and out, keep you informed. linuxactionnews.com. Also, big thank you to our members. Our core contributors keep us going, and they're getting some crazy great content these last few weeks. Big pre- and post shows. So if you want more Linux Unplugged, you can always become a member as well. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode. See you right back here next Sunday. I think old Leo's still using Linux.
That's so great.
Given it's episode 486, I'm curious how many of us have actually used a 486. I was thinking earlier, and I don't think I ever have. Wes, have you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess you were Pentium and older. I guess.
Yeah.
Is that? Okay. All right.
Boy, I'm not sure that I...
What?
Maybe.
Really?
No,
Really?
I must have.
Not even at school or anything?
Well, at school we had I grew up on Macs, actually.
Oh, yeah.
But I know my mother had a DOS PC that she used to complete her master's thesis. So I played a lot of Pac-Man and Tetris on that. I don't know what the architecture is off the top of my head.
My school spent a lot of money on either a Mac or the IBM PS2 series, which I believe started as 286s. And this was like IBM's consumer PC. That's where, by the way, the M model keyboard also came to the masses. And I seem to recall those were 286s. And then our school skipped the 386 line. My dad had one, but our school skipped the 386s and went hard on the 486 and then later on the Pentiums. But we just leaped right over 386 and went to 486, and it was considered like this massive upgrade. Everybody was buzzing at the time. I mean, like in our opening clip, we played the fact that that's where they introduced speculative execution, for better or worse. But it's also when they introduced user upgradable BIOSes.
Oh, wow.
You couldn't update your BIOS. I mean, I still don't, so I don't really need that feature, but I know I can.
You do too. Come on. I mean, you don't probably unless it's easy, right? But now that it's integrated into like GNOME software and stuff.
Yeah.
It's
that's GNOME software?
Oh, right. Thank you. I forgot. GNOME. Thank you. I'll get that right. Yeah, I actually have a lot of fond memories of this era of computing because it's also kind of the very last before you could run a system without a heatsink.
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of what I remember is like computers I built after that, you had to have heat sinks, and it just seemed really complicated.
Everything gets, more complicated.
Yeah. The 486 was pitched as this big improvement in multimedia as well. Check out the Intel commercial from the time.